Okay, imagine with me, if you will, that you're a scientist and your entire profession, your paycheck is predicated on scientific discovery, right? So, what do you do when you run out of things to discover? Like, let's say you run every test that you can and you have all the variables and you've ran it 100 times out of 100, it keeps coming up the same thing. What would you do if you felt as if you had no more research? Well, you'd make shit up. And that's where I feel like psychology and in a lot of the studies and professions that we have in 2019 America, I believe that's what they've done over the last 30, 40 years. Just wash, rinse, repeat. We kind of went as far as we could with biological discovery, even though I sincerely don't believe that to be the case. I just see where there's a lot of room for exploitation in the scientific field because, I mean, if coming up with theories and hypotheses are your bread and butter, that's how you get paid, then you're going to continue to come up with theories and hypotheses. And that brings us to this article from the Daily Wire. Psychology Today: people refusing to date transgenders is dehumanizing. Yeah, you heard that correctly. People refusing to date transgender is dehumanizing. And also, yay. And I don't mean that to be funny. I mean that as in that is the literal definition of homosexuality in many cases. I mean, if you are a dude that wants to transition to a woman to date women, that okay. Reasons were still expressed using dehumanizing language. This is written by Paul Boyes. If you are a heterosexual cisgendered person who only wishes to date heterosexual cisgendered people, then shame on you for dehumanizing transgender and the non-binary, according to a recent article published in Psychology Today. I think you can get where I'm getting at where it comes to just making crap up. The article explores a study written by Karen Blair and Rhea Ashley Hoskins of the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships. Is that a thing? Which essentially chastises people as bigots for the sin of being attracted to a man who is an actual man or a woman who is an actual woman, while also arguing that the prevailing attitude contributes to the psychological harm of transgenderism. I mean, at this point, it should be very clear why I believe gender is just bunk science. When first conducting their study, Blair and Hoskins asked close to 1,000 participants what kind of partner they preferred and gave them the following options: a cisgender woman, a cisgender man, a transgender woman, a transgender man, a person with a non-binary gender identification. Unsurprisingly, 87.5% of those polls said they would prefer the first two options, depending on which way they swing, cisgendered man or woman, respectively. Non-binary and transgender people were at the bottom and typically were only chosen by people who identified as bisexual, gay, or some other type of sexuality. For heteros, the results were other cisgendered heteros. The authors find this deeply problematic and believe that attitudes need to change. You're less. I think when it comes to the transgender community, I think it's less than a percentage point. I know the gay and lesbian community, that's about 5% of the population, but the trans gang, that's like less than a percentage point of the population. If trans and non-binary people lack access to one of the most stable resources of social support, this could explain some of the existing health disparities within trans communities, they write. Looking more closely at the patterns of responses, it also became clear that individuals were least likely to express an interest in dating trans women, even if their sexual identity would otherwise indicate an interest in women, i.e. straight men, lesbian women, or queer bisexual individuals. Indeed, nearly 20% fewer people indicated an interest in trans women than would have been expected based on sexual identities of the individuals within the sample. I just want to remind you that there's over 300 million people in the United States of America. So you're talking about a relatively small sample size, but I can't help but feel that this sample size is 130% right on. The authors also examined participants' responses in a similar study by the Canadian Psychological Association's annual convention, which yielded similar results. However, the authors blamed this on several factors outside of nature itself. Dehumanization, prejudice, uncertainty or lack of knowledge, and issues related to bodies and reproduction. The most common reason for being unwilling to consider dating trans people or non-binary people was that participants felt that they lacked information and understanding of what precisely these kinds of identities mean within the context of dating. It means you ain't gonna have no kids, more than likely. Like, that's what it means. And I mean, I don't know. I don't date for fun. I've never been the type of person to date for fun. Like, I mean, I'll casually swing around and chill with the ladies. But I mean, if I'm in a relationship, I'm in a relationship. And in the context of that relationship, you know, I would want to create a child, and that child be the reflection of that relationship. And unfortunately, when you're going through such traumas, it becomes impossible. Like, if I were to date a trans woman, I would be dating a man, and thusly there's no way for that to work out. If I dated a trans man, then I would be dating a woman, but I'm definitely the dude in this relationship, so. For example, many simply stated that they had never really considered the question before and were unsure of what it would mean to be in a relationship with a transgender or a non-binary individual. Other reasons, however, were less about lacking information, more about a strong dislike for trans people. I really don't think that that's a dislike. I think like I said, trans people are less than a percentage point of the American populace. But beyond that, there are just, like, when you're dating someone, courting, whatever you want to call it, has always been a prerequisite for, you know, marriage and building a life together. Now, if it's impossible to build a life with that person, then really, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, well, what's the point? Because you can enjoy another person's company without question. But as far as dating and trying to build a life and a legacy with someone, it's virtually impossible. And from my perspective, and I know that not everyone agrees with this, but I consider transgenderism a mental disorder. So I think the last person someone who calls themselves trans should be doing is dating and getting out into the dating world, because what you're trying to do is invite the issues that you have into the next person's life, and that's unfair to them, particularly when you have so many who are under the belief that they don't have to disclose that they have incompatible junk. So the authors scold participants for saying transgenders have make-believe identities or for wanting to date people with whom they could actually have biological children with, characterizing their language as dehumanizing. A minority of individuals mentioned a desire to only date people with whom they can have biologically related children. However, often these reasons were still expressed using dehumanizing language, such as saying that a trans man was not a natural man or a real man, and that therefore it would not be possible to have children with them, they write. And that's not dehumanizing language. That's the truth. What? Yeah, that's the truth. The authors conclude that while they cannot mandate who people should and should not date, they stress that transgender dating cisgenders should be seen as a sign of progress every bit as much as interracial dating. Why is it always brought back to race? It's always brought back to race, no matter what. It's just like, oh my goodness, no matter what it is, I bumped my arm, so, you know, black people bump their arm, so, you know, I mean, same thing. Just as sociologists have tracked acceptance of interracial relationships as a metric of overall societal acceptance of racial minorities, future fluctuations in the extent of which trans and non-binary individuals are included within the intimate world of dating may help to illuminate progress or lack thereof with respect to fully including trans and non-binary individuals within our society. They conclude, no. Okay, so I believe that's the end of the article. Let's make sure. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of the article. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. I appreciate you. Let's get back up here so I can wrap this up. It's so hard because I do want to be sensitive to, you know, people who are going through such issues. I think I try to express that in every video. I don't mean to come across as callous or uncaring. The issue is that, because I don't want to say it like this, but you're not special. You know, I mean, yes, as much as we would love for the world to just be all rainbows and sunshine. Unfortunately, it's not that. And when it comes to the world of dating, I mean, preferences are preferences. I mean, as a black man, trust me, I know that there is a bunch of women who will not date me because of that mere fact. Or as a not so tall guy, I'm not over 6 feet. So there are a bunch of women who will be turned off because of that. And you know what I say to that? I say, good on them. That's their choice. God bless America, right? I mean, it's their choice to not want to participate in an intimate or a sexual relationship with me. And that's fine. Because guess what? There's plenty of chicks more than happy. But also because, if you're with somebody and they are with you more out of obligation, then really that entire relationship's built off of resentment, right? I mean, you should want to be with people that want to be with you, not with people who feel obligated to be with you or feel as if they're doing you a favor. And that goes for men, women, green, blue, purple. It doesn't matter. And so when it comes to, this language being dehumanizing, no, I mean, it's not. It's just the truth. And the truth is a bitter pill to swallow. Trust me, I know I'm 50% truth pills, man. Like I'm all up in the gut. But it is something that you're better off accepting as opposed to, fighting against, particularly when, like I said, one of the more frustrating parts when it's compared to anything racial is that the racial components of the country are still a way greater number. Like, Black people, quote unquote, are 13% of the population, which is weird because we've been 13% of the population for a very long time. But still, 13% is still higher than 5% for the LGB, and for the T's is 0.5%. Like, it really is like less than a percentage point. So, I mean, the main thing that we've strived to do, and I feel like we've strived to do as a country, for people to not get beat up, people to not be harmed or hurt. Basically indifference is our greatest weapon when it comes to such things. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your life. Enjoy it. And if you're trans, I want you to enjoy your life. But at the same time, I find it very, what's the word? I find it very confusing for you to sit here and like, okay, well, now I want to, I'm trans and all this other stuff, but now I want to date like a regular cis person. It's like, what? So with that being said, thanks so much for putting up with me, all the internet stuff. Like it if you like it or dislike it. I'm not scared. Sub if you enjoy my fantastic voice. Share because sharing is caring, and speak. Let me know. What do you think? Would you date a trans person? I mean, would you date somebody who thought that they were something that, biologically they're not? I would love to hear that because I've dated bipolar chicks. Okay, I've dated chicks with mental issues before. Actually, that makes up a real long chunk and section of my dating history is females with mental issues. And I gotta say, guys, like to slap transgenderism on top of it is just next level to me. But I'd love to know what you think. And until the next video.